I never thought I'd see police cars in my driveway, their lights flashing against the old barn like I was some kind of criminal. Yet there I was, standing barefoot in the dirt, clutching a bucket of feed, as 3 deputies walked up the path. "Ma'am," the lead deputy said, his voice tight, "we have orders to remove you from the property." Remove me? From my farm? My father's farm? The land I grew up on, where I learned to ride before I could drive, where I scattered my father's ashes under the oak tree by the creek. It didn't feel real, but the truth hit me like a cold slap. The HOA, the neighborhood association from the shiny subdivision next door, had finally made good on their threats. They'd sent cops to kick me off the land that had been in my family for 3 generations. What they didn't know was that my brother was the sheriff. My name is Anna, and this farm was my life. 20 acres of pasture, a sagging red barn, a farmhouse with peeling paint. It might not have looked like much, but every inch was soaked in memories. My father used to say, "The land will take care of you, if you take care of it." And he did. He worked this farm until the day he died, and then it became mine. But inheriting the land meant inheriting a fight. Years ago, when money was tight, Dad sold off a piece of property along the main road. That strip became a subdivision, rows of identical houses with perfect lawns and shiny mailboxes. And of course, it came with an HOA. At first, I didn't think much of it. They lived their lives, I lived mine. But the letters started coming. "Your rooster is disturbing the peace. Your barn is an eyesore. Livestock should not be visible from the street." I laughed the first time I read them. Livestock. On a farm. But the laughter didn't last. Fines followed the letters. $50 here, $200 there. Before long, the bills stacked into thousands. I couldn't afford to pay them, not while keeping the farm running. And then came the threats. Court filings. Warnings of foreclosure. Letters saying I'd be removed by force. That morning, when the deputies pulled into the driveway, I realized the HOA wasn't bluffing. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew could help. "Danny," I whispered when he answered. "They're here. The HOA, they sent cops to evict me. They're trying to take Dad's farm." There was silence for a moment, then his voice hardened. "Stay where you are. I'll be right there." When Daniel's truck rolled in, gravel spitting beneath his tires, I felt a rush of relief. He stepped out in uniform, his badge gleaming in the morning sun. He wasn't just my brother, he was the sheriff of this county. He marched straight up to the deputies. "What's the meaning of this?" "Sheriff," the lead deputy said nervously, "we've got a court order." HOA filed for enforcement. Daniel ripped the papers out of his hand, scanned them, and shook his head. "This is a civil matter. You don't send deputies to throw someone off their land over HOA complaints. Not here. Not in my county." The deputies exchanged glances. Relief flickered across their faces. They didn't want to do this. Slowly, they turned back to their cars, muttering apologies. When the last cruiser pulled away, I sank onto the porch steps, tears running down my face. "Danny, I can't keep doing this. They'll just come back with more papers, more threats. I don't have the money, the lawyers." He crouched in front of me, his hand steady on my shoulder. "Anna, listen to me. This isn't just about you. This farm is Dad's legacy. They want to bully you into giving it up, but they'll have to go through me first. And I'm not backing down." The months that followed were a war. The HOA threw everything at me: lawsuits, court summons, new fines. They showed up at town meetings, claiming my farm was lowering their property values. They painted me as uncooperative, a nuisance, someone too stubborn to follow community standards. But what they didn't count on was the community rallying around me. My brother spread the word. People who'd bought eggs from me, families who came to the pumpkin patch every fall, kids who loved feeding my goats, they showed up. They wrote letters to the judge. They stood up at hearings and told stories about how the farm had brought people together. Even neighbors from outside town came forward, reminding everyone that farms were part of the county's backbone. Every hearing, every court session, Daniel was right there beside me, sometimes in uniform, sometimes just as my brother, but always steady, always strong. Still, the fight nearly broke me. There were nights I sat at the kitchen table, bills spread out in front of me, tears streaming down my face as I thought about selling everything just to make it stop. But then I'd look out the window, see the barn silhouetted against the stars, and hear my father's voice in my mind. The land doesn't just belong to you, you belong to the land. So I fought on. Finally, the day of judgment came. The courtroom was packed. The HOA's lawyers arrived with thick stacks of paperwork and smug smiles. They argued that my farm violated community harmony, that my barn lowered property values, that my animals disrupted peace and quiet. When it was my turn to speak, my knees shook, but my voice found strength. I told the story of my father, of growing up in these fields, of feeding half the community from my garden, of the families who brought their kids to ride the ponies and pick pumpkins. I reminded the court that this land wasn't just dirt and fences, it was a piece of living history. And then, the judge spoke. The HOA's claims were dismissed. The fines and liens were erased. Not only that, the HOA was ordered to pay damages for harassment. Gasps filled the room. On my side, people cheered, hugged, cried. On theirs, faces fell into silence. I had won. The farm was safe. That night, I stood on the porch as the sun set over the fields, painting the sky in gold and pink. Daniel leaned against the railing beside me, quiet but proud. You did it, I whispered. He shook his head. No, Anna, we did it. This isn't just your fight, it was all of ours. Dad would be proud. Tears burned my eyes, but for the first time in months, they weren't from fear. They were from hope, from pride, from love. And here's what I learned. Bullies don't always come with fists. Sometimes, they hide behind rules and fines and paper. They use fear, intimidation, and power to try to strip away what's yours. But when you stand tall, when you refuse to be bullied, when you have family and community behind you, they can't win. This farm isn't just mine. It's my father's legacy. It's my family's blood. It's the beating heart of this community. And no law, no lawyer, no boardroom bully is ever going to take that away. Because home isn't just where you live. Home is where your roots run deep. And mine run deeper than any rulebook could ever touch.